right. Okay, it is day 23. And our do now today is 4 inequalities that we are solving for n. And after we solve them, we graph. So let's go ahead and look at number 1. I've got 5 plus n is less than 16. So first I need to solve the inequality for n. What do I need to do here to solve for n?
Minus 5.
Yeah, take away 5. So to get n by itself, we need to get rid of whatever is over there with it. And there's a plus 5, so we do the opposite and do minus 5 on both sides. All right, what happens next? Yeah, my 5's cancel out, and then what am I left with? N is less than 11. Okay, so we just found that n is less than 11. So how can I show that visually on my graph? Yeah, so I want to put 11 right here. Yes, then I want to circle it. Am I going to shade it in or not? No, we don't shade it in because n, the variable n, is only going to be numbers that are less than 11. 11 is not included in that, so we don't color it. Now, how are we going to show visually that we are including all the numbers smaller than 11? Ooh, I heard right and left. Which one? Yeah, it says n is less than 11, so we want to color in everything that is less than 11. So we're going to shade this way. You guys see that? Yeah, that's all right. So whenever we see this sign, another way we can remember which direction we shade is just by looking at what direction it's pointing. This is like an arrow. You see that? It's going this way. So that's the way we shade, because this shaded area is representing any number that n could be. N could be anything that's shaded. All right, do we have any questions about number 1? No. All right, everybody feel okay about that? Yeah. Good. Let's try number 2 now. Number 2, I have negative 3n is greater than 12. What operation is happening between my negative 3 and the n?
Negative 3 times n.
Yes.
Negative 3 divided by.
Good, good. So whenever I have a variable right next to a number, we are multiplying. This is negative 3 times n. So to get rid of negative 3 and get n by itself, we're going to do exactly what Jenny said. We'll do the opposite of multiplication, and we'll do division. So I divide by negative 3 on this side, and under the 12, I do it on the other side. All right, what happens next? Yep, my negative 3's are canceled. Now I'll bring down my n, my greater than sign, and what is 12 divided by negative 3? Negative 4. Good job, guys. Okay, so n is greater than negative 4. How can we show that on the graph? Yep, we want to label our point, our tick mark here with the number, negative 4. I almost messed that up. Circle it. Do we shade it in? No, we don't. And then what direction? To the right, because n is any number that's bigger, greater than negative 4. So we're going to show that these are the possible values for n. You also notice that our greater than sign points to the right. So you could think of this as an arrow. It's pointing the way you shade. Good. Any questions about number 2? If you got that one wrong, do you understand why this is the answer now? Or do we have any? That's all right. Okay, good. As long as you get it now. That's what's important. Okay, let's look now at number 3. I have a more complicated one here now. Now we're getting into, let me turn the brightness up one here. It's getting a little dark. Wonder if I can do that. I don't know how much that helps. Okay, you guys see that all right?
Yeah.
All right. So in this inequality, I don't just have one step. I don't have one operation I'm undoing. I have multiple operations here. I've got a -3 times n, and I have -3n plus 2. So there is a specific order that we have to work backwards to get n by itself. So quick review of those rules and what order we go in. I'm going to get a sticky note and write it out to the side. So whenever we are solving an inequality or an equation, so I'm going to write when solving inequalities, we are working backwards to find the answer. All right, so when we're solving, we're always working backwards to find the answer. Just like in number 1 and 2, if I had addition, I would do the opposite and kind of go backwards, and I would subtract the 5 to get rid of it. Or in number 2, where I had multiplication, so I decided to do division to undo it. We're working backwards, doing kind of the opposite. We need to also do the opposite with multiple operations. So if you remember back to our first lessons that we were working on, we learned about the order of operations, the PEMDAS up here, the parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. And that tells us that normally we would do multiplication or division first in this case, and then you would do addition and subtraction. But since we're working backwards when we solve for a variable, we're going to do that also in the reverse order. So I'm going to write down those 2 steps we talked about last unit. When we have a 2-step inequality or equation, first we undo addition and subtraction. We do that first, since we're going backwards. Then, after we've gotten rid of any addition and subtraction, we undo our multiplication and our division. So this is the order. I'm going to write reverse order of operations. Okay, and then one more little key I'm going to give you. I need to move this light. I feel like I got a shadow on there. There we go. One more little key is our inverse operations. So just a little reminder of what the opposites are. So the opposite of addition is what? Yeah, minus subtraction. And the opposite of multiplication is what? Division. Absolutely, absolutely. So these are all the things we need to keep in mind when we are solving an inequality or an equation. So now that we have these in mind, let's look at number 3. I have multiplication here between -3 and n, and then I have addition here with this plus 2. What does my reverse order of operations tell me I need to undo first? The 2. Good. So if I have plus 2, how do I get rid of it?
You'll bring 2 down minus 2 and
Minus 2. We're doing the opposite. So I'm doing minus 2 on both sides. There we go. All right, now what happens? My 2's are gone. And then what? Yes, I need to bring everything down. I still have negative 3 times n is greater than negative 11 minus 2. What's that? Negative 13. That's all right. That's all right. Okay, now we have another problem. We've got negative 3 times n is greater than negative 13. And I'll tell you, we are going to get a decimal here. So if you got a decimal, you're probably right. What do we do now to get n by itself? If I've got negative 3 times n, divide. So we've done our addition and subtraction, getting rid of that. Now we're undoing our multiplication by dividing, because that's the inverse, that's the opposite. So I will divide by negative 3 on both sides. Very good. My negative 3's next to my n are going to cancel, and I'm going to write my answer off to the side. I didn't give myself enough room. So I'm going to bring my n, my greater than, and then negative 13 divided by negative 3. What is that? What is it? 4.3. All right. Everybody okay with that answer?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so now we know that n is greater than 4.3. So what that means in a reasoning type of way is that n, the variable n, could be any number that is bigger than 4.3. So how can we show that visually on our graph? Yep, we're going to circle our tick mark. What number are we putting here?
4.3.
4.3. Good, because that's the number that we are comparing n to. And then if n is greater than 4.3, do I shade to the right or to the left? To the right. Good. This is going to show that n could be any of these numbers shaded in. And since there's an arrow here, we know that means it goes on forever. It can be any number bigger than 4.3. Can it also be 4.3?
No.
No, it can't. It has to be bigger. Good. Do we have any questions about number 3?
No, I had it wrong.
Oh, good. Any confusion about number 3? Anything like that? We feel okay about it?
Yes.
Good. Good, good, good. All right, let's go to 4. All right, so we're using this same key. We're working backwards. Let's identify what operations we have here. I've got a negative 2 plus n divided by 6 is less than 3. So first of all, I've got a negative 2 being added to something. And then I have n divided by 6. So out of this adding a negative or dividing, which one needs to be undone first? The 2. The negative 2, we want to get rid of that first because that is addition and subtraction. So if I have a negative 2, how am I going to get rid of it? Plus 2. Yeah, so I'm going to write plus 2. And where else do I need to add 2? Under the 3. Good. On the other side of my separation of my inequality, not my equal sign, my less than sign. All right. What happens next? My 2's are canceled. Yep, 3 plus 2 is 5. And I got to bring down n divided by 6 and my less than. Okay, so now I have n divided by 6 is less than 5. So what do I do now? Yes, we have division here, so to get rid of division, we do the opposite, which is multiplication. Good job, guys. So I'm going to multiply by 6 on both sides. My 6's will cancel out, and I got to write it to the side again. And I'm going to be left with n, good, less than 5 times 6. What's that? 30. Good. How's everybody feel about that one? Feel okay? I know the ones where we have a fraction or division in there with addition and subtraction, they can be a little bit confusing. I think sometimes just seeing division written out as a number over a number, it just looks a little more intimidating for some reason. It does, but once you break it down, it's not so bad. All right, so now I know that n is less than 30. N can be any number that's smaller than 30. How do I show that on my graph? Yep, we're going to circle the tick mark. Do we shade it in?
No.
Nope. Put the 30 above it because that's the number we're comparing. And shade to the left because n is less. This is where the numbers get smaller. Good job, guys. Wonderful. All right, how do we feel?
Feel great.
You got it. You guys got it. Good. Good, good, good. Okay, let's talk about what we're going to do today. So, we're going to start with quite a bit of review, just to make sure everybody really feels solid on this. We're going to review just solving inequalities in general, like what we just did. That includes our inverse operations, our order of operations that we do backwards when we solve. We'll review the graphing inequalities, making sure that we understand all the things that are required in your graph. And then we are going to introduce 2 new symbols and how to graph them. Now, after we introduce these 2 new symbols, that is all the new symbols we'll have in this unit. There's just 4, and they're very similar to the ones we've already learned. So I'll give you guys a moment to get your notes together if you like to follow along and write. Let me rip this out and let you see it while I get my next page started. So I think today we're going to create a little guide to solving inequalities so that you have something to go back and reference if you ever forget the steps. And I'm going to get that page started. Day 23. All right. Okay. Does anybody still need this? I'm happy to leave it up.
I do.
Okay, I'll scoot it up just a little bit,
Okay.
like this. Oh, you're okay. Take your time. All right. So, here we go. Focus it. And I'm going to have you title this next part of our notes, How to Solve an Inequality.
Okay, I'm good.
All right, good deal. How to solve an inequality. Oh, do you still need it? Okay, I'll leave it up for a second and we'll get started on this part. So for these inequalities here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out some questions from the last quiz we just took, and as you see I whited out the equal signs and we're just going to put new signs in and use those problems. So let me get a Sharpie. We'll make this one less, this one greater. this one less, this one greater.
This is what we doing?
Yes. So I'm just having these to the side and I'll write them as we go.
Oh.
So I'm just kind of showing you what I'm doing. So how to solve an inequality. I'm going to use number 5 here as our example. I think sometimes having an example to look at as we write a guide is a little helpful. So I'm going to write 5, I'm going to make it kind of big, plus 3 times n is less than 20. So the first thing that is important for us to be able to do is to be able to see an inequality like this and be able to speak out loud what it means. If we don't know what it means, it just is a bunch of numbers and symbols. It won't have a meaning to us. So I'm going to have us start by just labeling how we would say this. So I'm going to say 5 plus here, and I'll kind of arrow 3 times n and I'm going to use a different color for this part. We're going to say this symbol is less than . So 5 plus 3 times n is less than 20. I think it's important to be able to understand the language in math because, you know, numbers, they kind of speak their own language, guys. All right. So the first thing to do when we are trying to solve an inequality is we want to identify our operations. And all that means is I want to look at what kind of pluses, what kind of multiplication, division, what kind of things are going on in my inequality. We want to identify our operations so that we can decide which one to undo first. So I'm going to say identify operations I'll say which one do we undo first? Bless you. All right. So that's our first step. We want to ask ourselves the question, which operation in this inequality are we going to be undoing first? So I'm going to have you also label this. I'm going to underline operations. Oh, and guys, I wanted to mention, I just got a whole bunch more colorful markers, like skinny ones, and some are thick too, but that bin over there, if you guys like to have colorful notes, I think colors help me. Help yourself. Feel free to take as many as you need. There's a bunch over there.
I was kind of nervous that they gonna melt the paper. So
Do what?
I was kind of nervous that they gonna wet the paper. You know how they do.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. But I'll tell you what, whenever I'm writing notes, for example, like I'm always using markers, I know it's a little wasteful, but I tend to only write on one side of the page, especially for notes, because sometimes it makes it a little easier to go back and see what you have. You're not looking through so many different, you know, so If that's more helpful to have big writing, have it colorful, have it labeled clearly, you know, then I think it's worth using the paper if it's helping you. Okay, so we're going to identify our operations. Up here, it looks like we have addition. We have a plus, so I'm going to underline that. And we have a times. And I just want to clarify, I'm not asking you guys to do all these little steps whenever we do eventually quiz over this. I just kind of want to give you a visual representation of what happens in your brain when we are solving these to kind of guide your thinking. Because I think sometimes it's easy to look at something, get overwhelmed, and not know where to think or start first. All right. So after we identify our operations, we're going to decide, again, which one are we undoing first. So I gave you that little, I wrote on the sticky note the guide of which one comes first. You guys remember which one out of plus or times, which one would we undo first?
5.
Yeah, we want to get rid of plus 5. So I'm going to just write out that little key again. First, undo addition and subtraction. And then second, undo multiplication and division. So now I'll take my problem and we'll do it in that order. I'm going to rewrite it down here. I've got 5 plus 3n is less than 20. And you said we're going to undo addition, undo that plus 5. So we'll, yeah, minus 5 on both sides. Good. Which is going to cause my 5s to cancel. Yep, bring down my 3n. Bring down our sign, our less than, and what's 20 minus 5? 15. Okay, and now we're on step 2. We can undo the multiplication here. We have 3 times n. How do we get rid of 3? Divide by 3. Good. Divide by 3 on both sides. My 3's will cancel. And I'm left with n is less than, what is 15 divided by 3? 5. Okay, so here is our answer. We found out that n is less than 5. So we'll label that too. N is less than 5. So n is any number smaller than 5. So this is everything that's happening in step 1. I'm going to start writing step 2, but take your time if you're still writing. Step 2. Say once we solve for n, and if anybody is struggling to keep up with writing all these words, I'm happy to make copies of this after class. So you just let me know. Once we solve for n, we begin making our graph. Alright, and then I'm going to go ahead and draw my line. Put a plus over on the right side and a minus on the left. And please feel free to tell me if I'm going too fast or too slow. I don't want to be speeding ahead of anybody I don't want you to be stressed trying to stay caught up. Okay. So over here we've got our graph. Whenever we quiz over inequalities, you will be given this. I will have the line, the tick mark, the plus and the minus already written for you. So you won't have to do that. All you'll have to know is that the plus means numbers get bigger this way. The minus means numbers get smaller this way. Now, what do we put above the tick mark? What are we labeling? 5. We always put whatever answer we got when we solved the inequality above the tick mark. So I am going to write 5. And what do we do now? Circle it. Okay. And last but not least, if n is less than or smaller than 5, which direction shows numbers smaller than 5? To the left. Good. So here's our little checklist of what needs to be on our graph. The first thing is your number labeled. So that's just whatever this is. The next check is your, wow, I can't spell, circle. And your last check is that it's shaded. So if you do those 3 things, you're in great shape and you've done your graph. Okay, I'm going to give you guys a moment to finish writing this in your notes if you like, and we're just going to use this as our guide for any other inequality we're solving. I'm also going to label right here. I'm going to say less than 5.
Take that and make it into a format, just give us one big piece of paper of that.
I can do that. If you guys would like copies of this, I can do
I
that.
think that would be helpful.
You got it.
Yeah.
I can do
It'd
that.
be all on one page.
Yes,
And then we can see it better.
absolutely, because I've got it all right here on one page.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
after class, I'll run to the copy machine, and anybody that wants one, you just follow me. All right. And here's what I'll do. I'm going to pause this on the recording. Okay, we are on to the next thing. We're going to introduce some new symbols today. So we already learned that this means less than, and this means greater than. So I'm going to label these less than and greater than. So here's the new ones. We also have a symbol that looks like this. And like this. So I promise you it's not too much more difficult.
Is that a division?
Nope, don't worry, it's not a division. All this means is less than or equal to. It's like an equal sign mixed with a less than. And then the next symbol, what do you think that means?
Greater than,
Yeah, it means greater than or equal to. And I'll show you what that means in context when it's in between numbers. Okay, so I'll call this 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to show you a visual of each symbol. Okay. So off to the side here, I'm going to do a graph with 1, 2, and I'm not going to make you solve this time. We're just going to focus on the symbols for this part. N is greater than 2 and 4. Oh man, I drew that one too close. That's all right. N is greater than or equal to 2. All right. So I'm going to put my little plus and minus on number 1 and my tick mark. So let's look at number 1. If you haven't finished drawing all 4, that's okay. I'll give you time in between. But let's look at number 1. I have n is less than 2. How do we show that visually on our graph?
You put the 2 before the tick mark.
Yes, I'm going to label my tick mark with that number 2 because that's the number that we're comparing to n. And then what do I do next? We're missing one step. Yeah, we got to circle it because this circle is going to tell us can n be included or not. So we don't shade this in because our inequality says n is less than 2. So it can't be 2. It has to be smaller. So now we can do what you said and we'll shade to the left where n is less than 2. Okay. Now we're going to see how we would graph our new symbol. I have n is less than or equal to 2. What do you think I should do first? I'll tell you, it's very similar to what we just did. There's only one tiny difference. What should I do first? Yeah, we still want to circle this. And what number should go above here? 2, absolutely. We're still comparing to 2. The only difference is in this example, number 1, we know n is less than 2. So n cannot be 2. So we keep our circle open to show that 2 is not included. whenever I say n is less than or equal to 2, that means 2 is included. That means n could be 2 or any number smaller. So what do you think we could show visually that it is? Yes, you're right, Jenny. The only thing we have to do different is we color in the circle. That's it.
So that's equal to?
That means equal to 2. N is less than or equal to 2. So guys, also, if you wanted to, I'll show you a fun side example. If I said n is equal to 2, like no comparison, it's just n equals 2, this is how we would graph that. We just wouldn't shade either direction. It's just 2. So we have that n is equal to 2 here. Now I just need to show how it can also be less than 2. What am I going to do? I'm going to shade to where it's less. It's the same thing as before, except for now 2 is included. So we color it in. It's not so scary once we get down to it. It's not so bad, guys. We're just coloring. That's it.
Do you allow people to eat in?
Yeah, yes, I don't care. You can eat.
Okay.
I've got food on my desk right now. You're good. All right, guys. Very good. Let's look at number 3. Number 3, somebody read that to me. What's it say?
N greater than 2.
Yes, n is greater than 2. So how can I show that on my graph?
I'll put 2 at the top.
I want to start by writing 2.
Circle.
And then I want to circle my tick mark. Now I need to decide, is 2 included or not? No, it's not included. 2 is smaller than n, or n is greater than 2. N is greater than 2. So what we're trying to show on the graph is all the possibilities, all the numbers that n could be. So if n is bigger than 2, what direction do I shade?
Right.
To the right. The direction that the arrow is pointing. This way. Perfect. All right. Okay, let's look at number 4.
2 over the tick.
Before we start graphing it, can somebody read this to me? What's this say?
N equal to?
Greater than or equal.
Yes, it's greater than or equal to. It's not just equal to. It's not just greater than. It could be 2 and it could be any number bigger than 2. So how do we do this?
2 over the tick.
Yes, we want to label our tick mark with the number 2.
Circle the tick.
Circle the tick mark, and then what?
Color in.
Color it in. When we color in our circle, it shows that 2 is included. Now what?
Now we're going to go.
Now we got a shade, and since it's greater than 2, we're going to go to the side where the numbers get bigger, to the right. Good. Good. So now, guys, we have 2 different guides here. We have, I'm going to make it real far away so we can kind of look at what we've done. We've got how to solve that inequality, how to graph, and how to graph for each type of symbol that we might see. So if you are ever stuck on a problem, reference these 2 pages in your notes. If you need to mark them, put a sticky note in there, make a little tab. If you need sticky notes, I got some up here. I'll put them up here. Y'all can grab them if you need one. These pages, I think, will be very helpful for whenever we're going back and trying to remember how we do this. Okay? How do we feel about the new symbols?
This ain't as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it's not as bad as we thought. It's not so bad.
I guess for me, when I was in math, and I seen this type Before I was taught what to do, it was overwhelming.
Well, yes.
The way you do it, you break it down and you make it simpler for us, even though it's a hard thing to do, but you still make it simple for our minds.
Well, thank you. That's my goal.
That's my interpretation.
Well, I'm glad that you guys feel like that, because that is always my goal. I want you to be able to understand, because, I'm not going to, lie to you. This isn't simple stuff. It's not elementary stuff. This is difficult. This is difficult content, but you guys are very capable. All of you can do this, and it's one of those things that, like you said, Jenny, it looks a lot scarier than it really is. It does take a level of comprehension, and you do have to focus and make sure you're intentional about every little thing you put on that paper. But whenever we have guides like this to go back and we can double check and say, okay, well, I got a symbol that looks like this, so number 3, my graph should look like this. Okay, then we can go back and make sure we're doing it right. Then we can make sure. Okay. I'm going to have you guys do a couple on your own. Make sure we feel good about it. So reference those 2 pages we just made if you've forgotten any of it in this, short little time here. Not quite yet. I want to, we do only have 10 minutes left, and I want to give you plenty of time to do your exit ticket. So, you know what? I change of plans, and I want to, instead of giving you practice right now and then checking and then an exit ticket and you're rushed to do the exit ticket, let's do the exit ticket now. And if you have questions on the exit ticket, you can ask, guys, always. So I'm going to write day 23, continued. And this is page 4 of our notes. And here is your exit ticket. Because I do want you guys to be able to take your time on it. Okay. I'm going to give you 2 problems to solve. So solve the following inequalities. Yes, if you want sticky notes, guys, you are welcome to them. So you're going to solve for n, and then you're going to graph. Now really be careful when you're looking at your symbols in your inequalities. I want to make sure that you guys, pay attention to what direction needs to be shaded. Make sure that if your circle needs to be filled in or not, that we're being careful on those. All right, let's do, I'm a little more worried about you guys knowing the symbol difference, not solving just yet. So I'm going to give you some slightly more simple ones for our exit ticket today. Let's do number 1 will be n minus 12 is less than 3. And I want you to solve this and graph it. And number 2, n divided by 4 is greater than or equal to 6. So remember, if you're slightly unsure about which part to do first, about which direction to shade, whether it should be filled in circle or not, go back to the guide we made and you should have everything you need there. So that is your exit ticket. I'm going to go ahead and stop this recording, and once you're done, you are free to go.